Good afternoon, everyone. We are just giving people another moment to join here since the previous talk did just end at 2:30.
Elizabeth, can you make me a co-host again? I just made you host.
Yes, no problem. You should be good to go. All right, well, it is 2:31. I think we'll get started. We may have a few more people joining us. Again, those sessions did just get out, but good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Flash Talks Session 2. I'm Elizabeth Craigie-Secting, and I'll be moderating this session. We'll start with finding the puzzle pieces, followed by a Q&A, and then we'll have a presentation on how to write emails so people know what you're saying, followed by a Q&A. I'll introduce the speakers before their talks, and just please note that we will be recording this presentation and then an accessible video will be available for viewing on the IT Professionals Conference website in the coming weeks. So now I'd like to introduce Mary Murphy, who will be presenting Finding the Puzzle Pieces. Mary is a research cyber infrastructure and campus lead for electronic lab notebooks. She is currently pursuing a Green Belt Lean Six Sigma and was recently named the Volunteer Coach of the Year 2021 by the USA Paralympic Committee. And now I will turn it over to Mary for her presentation.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. So today I'm talking about finding your puzzle pieces, where's our data, and tell you about how process mapping is a useful tool for research data management. A few learning objectives I hope for you to take away today is recognizing that I am a campus resource in research cyber infrastructure, and I'm the campus lead for electronic lab notebooks. Help you describe the purpose and capability of process mapping, recognize process mapping as a data management tool, and help you feel empowered to use process mapping in your workplace. The Research Cyber Infrastructure team is a focus area within the Office of the Chief Technology Officer at the Division of Information Technology. The team was founded in 2019 and focuses on enterprise-level services for data lifecycle, data storage, data science, and cloud computing. We are a researcher-facing group helping users design, test, and adapt data collection and analysis workflows. Our vision is to provide an integrated end-to-end infrastructure that makes it easier for researchers to build data and computing workflow to enable their discovery and innovations. First, let's look at process mapping. What is it? It's a visual aid that describes the steps of an activity or a flow of work. And the purpose of that process mapping is to be used as a practice and tool to visualize and communicate the linear time and movement of the people, places, and things that results in a single particular outcome, such as that activity or process. I think of process mapping a bit like a jigsaw puzzle with a little bit of a scavenger hunt mixed in. You first need to see the big picture, then locate all the puzzle pieces, use attention to detail to see the fine differences, and decipher connections between. Once connected together properly, you may see gaps and strategic areas to work on next. A few capabilities of process mapping includes being able to see both the big picture and the minute detail, identifying your current state in a snapshot in time of that process, as well as start identifying future vision and intentions. It allows for various perspectives, team collaborations, helps you build a SWOT analysis of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, as well as identify gaps, redundancies, and wastes to work on at a later time. Now, process mapping as a data management tool. Data management is a practice and framework to ensure data quality, integrity, and security. It's also a process of collecting, organizing, protecting, storing, and reusing data. The capability of process mapping and research data management is everything I just mentioned, but more in detail here specifically about your data. So you can help identify what data and metadata exists what practices your department has around your metadata, as well as storage and backup. And finally, the documentation and SOPs that might exist. It helps you unify procedures, increases transparency, creates a vision for a community of practice, and personalizes prioritization and support areas. Let's say that Ms. Frizzles is a PI and her students are researchers. There are some items we know and some others that we don't, as you can see the grayed out areas. The scavenger hunt involves communicating with each individual to learn what the unturned pieces are. To better understand the current state of the research data, it's useful to build a map of connections and relationships, as well as a data flow across the lab. The PI may have expectations to follow, while he or she and each student may also have individual preferences. The diversity across, say, data storage may cause issues with version control, communications, quality, and security. A lab may benefit from improving data management practices or other areas of data flow. However, you don't know what you don't see. A map helps see a snapshot in time and all the connections before making decisions. And I'd say Ms. Frizzles agrees. Where do we start? First, let's look at the difference between a concept map and process map. You may want to start with a concept map, identifying general buckets of information and the relationships between. Then move to a process map, which adds linear time between each step, identifying how long things actually take and the logical decisions made throughout the process. Let's look at a few do's and don'ts of process mapping. You want to start at seeing the big picture, looking at that 3,000-foot view, and avoid adding too much detail too soon. You don't want to get caught up in analysis paralysis when you're trying to see what we have on the table. Ooh, sorry. Next, you want to remember linear time. You want to see that there's movement from one activity to the next. You want to avoid stacking boxes on top of each other and having them snake around like this image shown here. It makes it difficult to see how that time is related to each item, as well as who might be in charge of that activity. You want to walk the process and engage all stakeholders who may touch the steps involved. And remember to avoid working in a silo. And finally, map what you see and assume reality and expectations are not the same. A few basic key symbols to remember as you start making your process map. Here we have an oval, which is usually the start and an end of a process. A square or rectangle is oftentimes a step or an action. A rectangle with kind of a swirl on the bottom is used as a documentation, so any SOPs that might be associated with that particular step. You have your arrow as linear time, your diamond as decision, usually it's a yes or no question, and a dotted line is used for several things, and I usually use it as a shared responsibility across individuals. You'll see an example of that soon. So as I mentioned, you want to start at that high level. You want to start with about 4 or 5 steps. As you can see here, the example below each step is very generic and can relate to pretty much any research lab. Then you want to start adding detail, seeing who does what when. This is an example of a swim lane diagram. You can see here there's stop and end times in the middle and near the end. There's different stages of this process. We have the field preparation, the data collection, and each swim lane. So Alex, Nicole, Taylor, and Jamie have their own lane of activities that they're responsible for. You can see that Nicole and Taylor share a responsibility, that dotted line here in the center, and then it goes back to Nicole's responsibility. So this is a really helpful way to identify, again, who is responsible for which task, helps you see any redundancies or gaps in a process, maybe two people think they're responsible for something, and as you're documenting what you see, not what you're expecting, you might understand that you can make more clarity in a process. You want to start documenting what you personally do and what you think you already know. Collaborate and listen to the team to document what they do. Draw out all the knowledge that amongst your lab, and start big, then start diving deep into the details. Once your current state is known and you've found some gaps, redundancies, and inefficiencies, you can then start designing your future vision, your expectation of what you'd like it to look like in the future. A few questions to ask about your data flow as you're starting to work on this is, what is the data? What type of data types do you have? How is it collected? Who owns the data? Who uses it? Any sort of upstream and downstream dependencies? And what is it used for? How's the data collected? Is it physical, digital? Where's the data stored? And what are the locations and how many locations? And how is it analyzed and by whom? What documentation exists? Where is it? And what's the purpose of it? Finally, some useful tools to get you started. I think the cheapest and easiest tools you can use is a whiteboard and markers or sticky notes and pens. It's very helpful to have a very, very large space to start creating a map so that individuals can come up to it and start adding the activities, steps that they work on. And it's a collaborative activity. Glyphy.com is also a free application. It's a drawing application with the correct symbols and connectivity that you would need between objects. Google Draw, Google Slides have that same capability, as well as Microsoft PowerPoint. Canva is helpful for publishing. So if you want something to look pretty, you can look at that, as well as Microsoft Visio, which is my preference for making process maps. So here's an example of what, say, an SOP might look like. It's written out quite detailed on this one, just a quick example, but it's hard to identify who, which individuals are responsible for the tasks, how long it actually takes in between those tasks, and where that data might be actually be moving. So now you create a visual and you can see the movement in time. If you're reading here, this is an example of a process map I helped Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute create for their data flow. And you can identify that physical paperwork is moving from one cabinet to the next, as well as the documents associated with those steps. As you can see here on the left, you also have the different individuals. You have students, coordinators, data specialists that have their own role, own responsibility in this process. Here's a very similar example as part of that same process. It's just zoomed out a little bit to show you those different phases in time. We have everything from, say, a cross-scoring, data entry, quality assurance, kind of mapped out so you can see those phases. And on the very, very bottom here on this image is that physical movement of data, where before it was indicated in the arrows between each step. So that is all I have today. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer any, as well as help you with anything in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for your talk. I will open it up to questions. You are, I believe, able to unmute, or if you type it in the chat, I will relay the question to Mary. I will note that a couple of people in the chat recommended Mural, which is not free, and then Mermaid, which renders in GitLab as other tools to use for process mapping. Well, while we're waiting, I'm curious, Mary, do you know how prevalent process mapping as a data management tool is, like in terms of being a common practice on campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't believe it is very common on campus, but I am still new in my role, so I'm happy to hear of other people who are using it. I've kind of created this this tool in terms of data management in my own work, and really would love other people to work on it because it helps you see strategic areas to work on. I think the researchers I've worked with may not know. Sometimes they don't know where to start. They know something needs to be done. And they need kind of seeing that map, seeing that image of where do I even start? Where other individuals might not even, they might not be open to change, but the students are. So I think this map kind of helps get everyone on the same page and get an idea of where they can start. If there is, say, an issue that they like to resolve, is it actually an issue, and where is it located? So I don't think it's very prevalent on campus, but I hope to increase that.
Well, thank you for that. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat right now. And we are going to go ahead and move on to our second flash talk. But if anyone is thinking of questions for Mary, please feel free to get them in the chat. And if we aren't able to address them during the session, I'll make sure Mary has them and can follow up with you via email afterwards. So our next presentation is how to write an email so people know what you're saying, with Laurel Bellman and Sarah Lean. So now I'll turn it over to Sarah and Laurel for their presentation.
Great, thanks so much, Elizabeth. So as Sarah gets our presentation up, I'm going to briefly introduce myself. So my name is Laurel Bellman. I have been working at UW-Madison for about 5 years as an event coordinator. First, I worked at UW Law, and now I'm with Do It. And prior to that, I developed museum exhibitions for history museums. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sarah Lean. I'm part of the CAL's IT team at Ag Hall, and I support the College of Ag and Life Sciences administration and the Ag Research Stations and several other departments. And that's basically my introduction. So.
Great. All right, well, let's get started. Let's talk about how to write emails so that people can actually understand what you're saying. And let's talk about why you should listen to us for the next 10 minutes. So by writing clearer emails, you'll find that people will do what you ask them to do. People will do what you ask them to do correctly. You won't end up getting a flood of emails from people asking you to re-explain your email that you just sent. And gosh darn it, people will like you. So why will your readers like you? Well, they'll like you because they'll actually be able to find the information that they need to know or find out what they need to do easily. They'll be able to understand what's being asked of them or what they need to know. They'll be able to find the information that they need in order to take the next steps. They'll be able to understand why something is being asked of them or is being communicated. And most importantly, they will be saving time, and so will you. So let's talk about a few good writing guidelines. So this very first one that we have listed up here is probably the most important thing that you can take away from this presentation. And that is to start with what your reader needs to do or know, not why they need to do it or why they need to know it. That's the most important thing that you can do, is start with what they need to do. Next, you should try to write to the individual. So use personal pronouns like you and we. You should also try to use the active voice. That'll really help shorten how many words you use in order to say what you need to say. And going along with that is to try to write a lot shorter sentences. Now, this is a really important one, I think, for higher ed. It's important to try to avoid jargon and acronyms. I think you need to try to assume that your reader might be brand new to UW-Madison or at least brand new to your department, and they simply might not know all the acronyms that you throw around for different departments and places around campus. And you have to assume too that they might not be familiar with all of the software and platforms and things like that that you use. It's just best to assume that they don't know too much about what you're going to be talking about. And finally, you should try to design your email for readability. So do things like break up information with headings. As we have done in this slide, use bullet points for lists. You can also use different fonts, or as we've done here, bold the first part of the most important information. And you can even potentially use tables in order to clarify information. So those are a few of the key guidelines. Now let's talk a little bit about the process that you might go through when you are thinking about composing an email. So it's a good idea to go ahead and ask and answer the following things for yourself. Ask yourself, who is going to be reading this email? Who's my audience? Next, it's important to figure out what you are asking them to do or what you are asking them to know. Next, what information does my reader need to know in order to act, in order to do the next thing? And then finally, why are they doing this? So if you go through those steps, if you ask those questions of yourself, jot down the answers, you can pretty easily come up with a fairly succinct email. And you can see the example that we've given here. Now we're going to go through a couple more examples of some emails to help you better understand kind of what's good and what's bad, even though hopefully some of it is obvious. So for that, I'm going to send it over to Sarah.
So unfortunately for this example, I did this. So the original email I sent out and I had 0 people reply. And then when I looked at it again, I realized why. If from what Laurel just went over, if you look at my original one, all the mistakes I made, that I buried what I was asking them to do, asked them to do things that does take some knowledge of how Outlook works to actually do the scheduling, and just really didn't use any white space, and it's just a block of text. The second one got some replies from people who were asking for an IT orientation, which, considering my readers, if they're asking for an orientation on how IT works, I should explain things.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I explained what the orientation was. I used bullet points, and a picture is worth 1,000 words when you explain where to click and what to do. So this one got a lot better results. And I'm going to move straight into the second example here. And this one, we want a little bit of interactions with you. So I think we've all gotten the general email from a user that comes in. My screens aren't working, help. And we wrote up a tech reply, and I want you guys in the chat to put all the things we did wrong. If you want to just drop them in there for the next 30 seconds or so, they should jump out at you pretty well here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, all those acronyms for sure.
Yep, just one big chunk of text. Yeah.
No white space. Yep, that's pretty obvious.
Okay, and now we're going to look at an improved version. So this is the better reply. So this one, it's shorter, it's clearer. We use bullet points, and digging into the problem, sometimes it's easier just to run through a few troubleshooting things and then explain them their next steps. And then how to contact us at the end. So I have run through that fairly quickly. Our additional resources. This, I was going to drop this in chat.
I can do that,
I can
Sarah.
do that.
Oh,
Yeah, somebody will do it.
So, so this is a page of our additional resources. These are hyperlinks that from the Google Doc I just dropped in there that you can link to, that can hopefully help you write clearer emails so people can understand what you're saying. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, we'll have to provide access to the document. Sarah.
Oh, I didn't, okay. I
Oh,
will
That's
also,
okay.
Sarah,
move
that
that
is
to-
actually a folder to the pre-recorded content for this conference. So
Oh.
I think you might have meant to paste a different
Okay,
document in there. And I can't copy and paste from the Google Doc because it's stripping out all the hyperlinks.
okay, I will take care of that. Just want.
No worries, take your
questions,
time.
though. Jump on in.
I have taken the plain language course that's offered by the university, which is one of the things that is listed here, and I would highly recommend it. It goes into far greater depth than we have gone into here. This is kind of the down and dirty elevator pitch version of it, but I would highly recommend that course for everyone. Like I kind of feel like it should be required when you start at UW, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, so there's a comment in here about people that love exclamation points in their emails. Yeah, Sarah and I, when we were putting together this presentation, talked about whether or not we should get into email etiquette. We decided that that would be easily a 30-minute presentation just on email etiquette alone. But yeah, some people, they just love their exclamation points.
So Laurel and Sarah, I am seeing a question here in the chat. I believe we're at the question portion. I apologize, I didn't actually say that. So the question says, I heard about someone who mentioned that their team didn't want them to use bullet points in their communications. Any thoughts on suggestions for them?
Wow, I can't imagine somebody not wanting bullet points. That's fascinating. If it was me, I would ask that individual or that team of people, why? What was the rationale behind that? Maybe it's something funky like with formatting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why a person wouldn't want their information bullet pointed. So I would dive deeper and find out a little bit more about why not.
Like, I guess you could use tables or numbers to kind of give you the same
Right.
word base, just to kind of break things apart. I mean, I wouldn't use bullet points in like a personal letter to someone, but for business stuff, yeah, that's kind of the way direction I would go.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I wonder why people have a dislike for bullet points. Interesting.
Somewhat tangentially related to your talk, which may really merit another talk itself, but kind of, do you have any quick suggestions for how you can write a clear subject line for your email?
Yeah, so I would say, basically follow the same principles and guidelines that you would for the main body of the email. So start with, what you're asking first. So what's the most important thing? Like, please print, print this, something along those lines, or please review, something like that. I think it's a good idea to avoid using all caps. I know that seems like a good idea, but I think it can kind of send people into a panic. It's probably not a good idea. And keep it, short and sweet, right? Because especially if people are using something like their mobile phone to read the email, a lot of that email subject line is going to get cut off. But if you keep it nice and short and succinct, then it's less likely to get cut off. Anything I forgot, Sarah? Other tips?
Sometimes also including action required sometimes gets people's attention a little bit better, or if it's just information that's why they're getting it. Sometimes you get better responses and get quicker responses if you let people know that there's something in that. But definitely keep it short. If your entire message is in the subject line, that sometimes doesn't really work. And if you change the subject, don't just hit reply and then start on a whole nother conversation and leave the subject line the same. That's one of those things that so many things get lost that way.
Yeah. I had somebody ask me, I was, great point, David. That was actually exactly what I was going to discuss, is how you can try to avoid messages going into your spam filter. And that gets to the all caps situation. That's kind of a tip off or a flag for the system that it might be spam, as if it's in all caps. So that's why it's good to avoid that. But yeah, you can end up with a lot of emails in the spam filter if you do write like action required. It's an issue for sure. I guess I usually do, yeah, like needs review or something like that. I deal with mostly non-IT things in my emails, so I think my things are a little bit, my subject lines tend to be a little different though.
It is 3:01. We started a minute late, so we decided to go a minute late. But I do want to be aware of everyone's time. The next session at the conference is at 3:15. So we will go ahead and conclude this session. I'm sure that Mary, Laurel, and Sarah would be happy to answer additional questions by email if you have them. We've got some more great sessions coming up here as we get towards the end of our conference. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending today, and I hope to see you at a session later this afternoon.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.